welcome to Lesson 7 on this series on Unity Fundamentals. This course was put together for the students at Saturday Academy, and I am your instructor, Will Patillo. Today's lesson, we're going to be starting on creating our first enemy character. This is going to be broken into a couple of different parts because it's fairly complex, but we'll be going through it step by step as with everything else. We're also going to be drawing quite a bit off of some of the work that we've created already. So just a quick overview of what's going to happen. We're going to have a enemy character which will look very much like the player, so I'll just go ahead and duplicate that right now. I'm going to call them a guard. And bring them out over here. So the idea that kind of have going with this game is that we have a player and they're escaping the room, like they're in a little prison. So what else do prisons have besides walls? Well, also guards. And so that's what this enemy is going to be. Their way they're going to work is they're going to patrol between a number of different specified locations, just moving around kind of slowly between them. And then if they see the player, then they will run towards the player. And if they catch you, then the game resets. So to start out with, we're going to be building this patrolling behavior, and we'll deal with the chasing the player later. So I'll start by working with this guard here, and actually just so I don't forget it, there's a very good chance once you've created one guard, you'll eventually want to have quite a few. So I'll go ahead and just make this a prefab. Also, I'm just noticing this white color on the character is a little boring, and plus now that there's multiple characters, it's good to have them visually differentiated. So I'm going to drop on this blue material for the character, make them look a little more interesting. Now, I'll leave the guard with this white material. Now, I'm going to open up this guard prefab by clicking there. And we don't need a camera or a first or third person view attached to this guard. We'll still need many of these other components. We also don't need keyboard input, so I'll go ahead and remove that component. We're still going to keep the capsule collider, a move and rotate script because it's going to be able to move and rotate, and also the rigid body, and then the model separated out with all that stuff, and then this little visual eyepiece right there. I'm also just noticing that we have a box collider on the eyes, and we really don't need that because this little goggles is just for the visuals, and so it doesn't really need to be part of the collider, which reminds me that that cube is also probably on the player as well, so let's go into the model. Yes, there it is. I'll go ahead and remove that from the player. Always good to just get rid of components that you don't need. Keep things a little simpler, less likely for there to be side effects. Alright, so this guard right here has the ability to move and rotate, but as you may remember, this move and rotate script just takes in arguments telling it where to go and how to turn. It doesn't actually control this. For the player, we were controlling it with this keyboard input. For the guard, we need something else to take the place of that input. So I'm going to start off by creating a really general purpose script called follow. Create C# script follow. And essentially the logic we're going to use here is when the guard is moving between waypoints, we're just going to set a waypoint of interest for them, and they will follow over until they reach it. Once they get there, the waypoint that they're trying to go to will move somewhere else, and then they'll just continue following it until they get there, it moves somewhere else, they'll continue following until they get there, move somewhere else, and so on forever. And then when they want to chase the player, we just change their focus from a waypoint to the player, and then they'll be following the player. So let's get started on this follow script here. And if that explanation didn't make sense, then you'll see it in action. And now for our libraries, we're not going to need either of those collections. And this script, actually, if we just take a look at the keyboard input as our point of reference here, this is also going to need a reference to this move and rotate component, like that. Also, before I forget, I'll just go onto this guard and add this follow component. Oh yes, I'll open the prefab. Follow. Okay, it's a little picky about how you add components to prefabs because it has to make a distinction between instances and the prefab resource itself. So yeah, just go into the prefab, click the top part of the guard, add component, type in follow, and find it, and it should be fine. All right, so now go back into this follow script. Okay, we have declared our movement variable. Now we need to get a reference to it. So we'll private void awake so that it will just get this dependency as soon as the scene starts. Movement equals get component move and rotate. Okay, great. So now this follow script has access to this move and rotate script. So next, movement, kind of like with keyboard input, how we have this update loop. It's moving a small amount every single frame. We're going to need something similar in follow. Private void update. And so it's going to, the movement and rotations all going to happen here. I'll also remember follow needs a target, so I'll go ahead and set that variable now. Public transform target, because this is moving to a location, so you don't need to know everything about the game object. We just need the transform of the thing that we're following, because that includes its position. And one thing, just as a little safety check here, it's possible that the target won't have anything assigned, and we don't want to be getting runtime errors if that happens. So we'll just put in a little check right here. If target equals null, so that is if nothing has been assigned, then exit early, return at. Okay. So yeah, if this is unassigned, then does nothing. Okay, and then we'll just call methods we haven't built yet, but we'll get to that, for move and rotate. Now let's write those. Private void move. Our player character had the ability to move left, move right, kind of like strafing, and also move back, in addition to rotating left and right. To keep things a little simpler, for our guard, we're just going to move forward. And the way that's done is just go to movement.move and vector3.forward. And also, so I don't get a compiler error, I'll just also create a rotate method right here. And I'll leave that blank. Fill that in later. So now, if we run this, and this guard, okay, does not have a target, so yeah, it is not moving. So if I say just take this, I'll just create an empty game object, put it right over here, and set this down. I'll start with 0, 0, and then move it out over here, and I'll just call this a follow target. Okay, and I'll go ahead and assign this follow target to the guard. And now if we run the scene, and the guard just moves forward at a constant speed. So let's just slow them down a little bit, give them a move speed of 2. And we run this. Now the guard's moving a little slower. That's I kind of like that as a patrol speed. Currently, it doesn't really matter where this follow target is. They're just always going to move forward. We want them to constantly be turning so that they're facing the follow target. So we'll start here by finding our target direction. And I'll declare these variables as I create them. So target direction equals the target location minus my own location. Okay. And these haven't been declared yet, so I'll just create them up here. Vector 3, target direction, and also a vector 3 for target location. One thing about this is that the farther away the transform is from its target, the bigger this vector is going to be. And when we get closer, it's going to get smaller. And since the whole point of this is just to get a direction, we don't really want magnitude being involved in this. So I'm just going to take all of this, put it in parentheses, and say dot normalized. And what normalization does is it takes whatever vector you have and then changes it proportionally so that the magnitude is 1 without changing the proportion of x, y, and z. So when you're just getting direction, normalizing is pretty good so that scales don't affect anything. And so now we're going to look at this direction, and depending on whether it's positive or negative, we'll either be turning clockwise or counterclockwise. So if vector 3 dot signed angle transform dot forward target direction and vector 3 dot up, and also just put in a greater than 2. This 2 is kind of arbitrary. Actually, I can go with the 0 for now, and you'll see the value of putting a different number in there. Movement dot turn 1. So let's take a look at this vector 3 signed angle. And okay, unity vector 3 dot signed angle. This is always a good thing to be looking up the documentation constantly whenever you're working with a new method. So this takes in 3 arguments: the from vector, the to vector. So this is our from vector. Our point of reference is straightforward, and our goal is this value, this direction that was computed right here. And since when we're rotating, the guard is going to be rotating on the y-axis. Notice the y rotation is what's changing as I rotate them in the way that they're going to rotate in the game. That's that axis. Then it'll get the degrees of difference between these 2 vectors around that axis. So if the difference in degrees is positive, that's this greater than 0, then we're going to turn clockwise. As remember, a positive value right here in this move and rotate, positive is clockwise. And now else if, I'll just copy all this in. And is this time, instead of a greater than, we're looking for a less than. Movement dot turn -1. All right. So we'll start with that, and there's going to be a couple of different errors here, which we'll just address one by one. So I have a guard and a follow target. Oh, it looks like there's some console errors. Move and rotate does not, oh yes, because it's not movement.rotate, it's not movement.turn, it's movement.rotate. When you're calling this method over here, it's the names of the methods need to match. All right, that should make that go away. Great. So let's see what I'm going to put this follow target out over here. So if I run this scene and I notice my guard is completely ignoring the follow target and just moving back in this direction for some reason. Okay, what's going on with that? Move him back. Move them around. Oh, this always seems to be going the same way. I wonder if I'll just pull the guard in, and once they get there, then they start turning around. So where they're going right now, if you look at their position, they are moving to 0, 1, 0 as their destination. They're just kind of going around in circles on it, which tells me that this target location is always 0, which makes sense because I'm never setting target location. It just has the default vector3.0 value. So I need to actually set target location. So for now, I'll just say up here, target location equals target.position. Let's try this again. Run the scene, and I look at my guard, and yes, now they're moving towards my follow target. If I move it around, then they will follow it. And now there goes the walking in circles. Okay. Now, a couple of things I'm like to change here. I'm going to change these zeros to 2 and -2. This will just get rid of some jitter. Right now, every single frame, the guard is always going to have an angle to the target as greater than 0 or less than 0. So this rotate is going to be called every single frame, either turning clockwise or counterclockwise, which means they're always going to be having a little bit of jitter right there. Actually, and better, actually, instead of using 2, I'll just put in a variable right here. So I'll call it serialize field and float min rotation. Oh, minimum rotation. No need to make people who are reading your code have to guess what your acronyms mean. Typing it out isn't that hard. So if it's greater than minimum rotation or less than negative minimum rotation. And that way we can just kind of mess around with our values up here. All right. So now, run the scene, go in the game. It's going to work pretty much the same way, except now the guard should jitter a little bit less. Good. Okay, so now we have our follow working. And it seems just fine for now. So now that we have this going, let's start creating some waypoints for the guard to move around in. So I'll create a game object and patrol path, and I'll just put in a 0. But there, I'll just make a couple of these. So Control D, 2, 3. Okay, create 4 of them, and I'll create a center them over here, and have patrol path 0 be this point, 1 be over here, and 2 down this way, and then 3 over here. You can put them wherever you like. One also thing is that it can sometimes be a little tricky to see where transforms are when you're just moving them around. Actually, I'll just bring them all up to a little bit above the ground. So one way around that is if you just have them all selected and add a component, put in a mesh filter, select here. A mesh filter, by the way, is a set of vertices that describe a shape. Now, vertices by themselves are not visible unless you also have a mesh renderer, which makes the mesh in the filter visible. Now, you'll notice right now they're all this weird glowy magenta color. That's because they don't have a material assigned. So I'll just assign our default material. That will work just fine. And then I'll just shrink them down a little bit. 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. There we go. So now they're all small. And I can just use these little mesh filters for placing them, so I can clearly see where they are. Let's say maybe move this one in a little, and this one in as well. Okay, and just shrink this path down so it doesn't take as long to go between them. And then when you don't actually want them in the game, you can select them all again and just turn off that mesh renderer. So now they're back to being invisible. So our goal now is to have this follow target move so that its position matches that of patrol path 0, and then once the guard reaches it, then the follow target will jump to control path 1. So that way the guard can just always be following this same target. So for that to work, we'll just take this follow target and add component, and we'll just use that whole, let's see, where is it? Yes, fixed point movement. This whole handy script, and it will move itself between 4 possible locations: patrol path 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll give it a starting index of 0. So right at the beginning, follow target should jump so that its position and rotation matches that. So let's just test to make sure that works. I'll just throw follow target some arbitrary place, and let's see that it moves. And yes, the follow target has jumped so that these two positions match. Great. Now, for this follow target, we'll also add in a sphere collider, set it to be a trigger, and then give it a contact event. And on contact, we will call on itself this fixed point movement and cycle position. So now, when the guard touches the follow target, it will jump to the next position in the path. So let us see if that works. Okay, the guard is moving to the follow target, which is right there, and then they touch it, the follow target is moved, and now the guard is moving somewhere else. Right, so we have our patrolling behavior. Now there's one problem with it that I'd like to demo right now, which is that, let's see, if I leave the room, and if I, as the player, walk into that follow target, well, this might be a little hard to demonstrate because the follow targets are invisible. But what happens Actually, easy way I can show this, I'll just set its speed to 0. All right, now the follow target is over there. And if I go as the player and I move towards it, get a little closer, yes, the player has just touched the follow target, and that has caused it to move. And we don't really want that. You want this target to only move when the guard touches it. So I'm going to add a little bit of extra logic to this contact event right here. And I'm just going to say right here, serialize field, and let's go with collider. Actually, no, I'm going to go with game object. Object of interest. So now on this onTrigger enter, we already have this condition for locked, and we're going to add another condition here. So if it's not locked, and, so double and sign, other.gameObject equals, double equals, object of interest, then use this onContact.invoke. And if something else touches it, then we're going to skip that line. So let's run this again and see if we can have the same thing happen. Okay, so I'll just go through and I'll collect these coins. Okay, that's got... Right, so now the coins are not registering collisions with the player. So let's go ahead and just assign some things here. Go into my escape room, go to my coins, and now all of these have this contact event. Now they have an object of interest, which is none. And so for each of them, open these all up, select these models, and then drag in the player. Having this extra condition is good for when we need it, but sometimes it's a nuisance to be dragging new things in all the time. So if the object of interest is null, then we should just not be using it as a condition. So I'm going to restructure this logic a little bit and say if, just move this logic over here. If other.gameObject is not equal to the object of interest, and object of interest not equals null, then we'll return out early. And so if an object of interest hasn't been assigned, so if it's null, then this condition will never happen and won't return. We'll go on and just continue to check the locked. But if it has been assigned, then we look at whether this other that we've just ran into is equal to the object that we've assigned. And if it is, we continue on, check locked. If it is not, then we return out. So now, these coin models, I could have not bothered to set it to player, and they'll still work. Although I'm actually kind of glad that we're putting this in, because right now if the guard were to touch these coins, then they would get collected, and we don't want that. So yeah, set those to player, and actually just go same thing with the button. Go in here and look for its contact event and drag in the player, so that's the only thing that can touch it. And actually, yes. So let's see if this works. Third person, and I pick. Yes, I can pick up the coins, and good. And that still works. Now with the guard, with the follow target, this one is only interested in the guard, or specifically this the game object that is attached to this collider. So now, also one thing just for debugging purposes, picking up all these coins every single time I play through this game can sometimes be a nuisance, so I can just go onto my button and just not have it be locked at the beginning. Now I can just walk straight over to the button and press it, and the door is open. Okay. So now I'll go into the scene view and sets this stop the guard from moving. Take a look for where that follow target is. It's okay, it's over there. Go into game view right this way. Walk over to it. I'm getting close. Just move back a little bit. Okay, so now you can see the player is touching this collider and it's not moving. Now if I take the guard and I let that move, then you'll see as soon as the guard touches this collider, that is the object of interest, and so now it moves somewhere else. Right. And then one last thing to clean all of this up is I'm just going to create a new empty game object, and I'll call it a guard container, and take all of these and drop that in here. Now, this is all these patrol paths and the follow target is now actually part of the guard, but I don't want to make it part of this prefab because if the patrol paths are children of the guard, then they will move with the guard, and so that will cause its target to move as the guard's moving, and it'll never actually reach it, or could cause other unexpected behaviors as well. So what I really want is for this guard container to be the prefab. So to make that change, I can just go into this guard and right-click and unpack prefab completely. So now this is no longer a prefab. Although it's still listed as a prefab here, so I can just delete that. And now I'll take this guard container, and and then it's kind of offset. So let's take this over to 0, 0, 0, guard. Put that at 0, 0, 0. That way the location of the guard container will match that of the guard, and otherwise it gets kind of awkward placing them. Okay, bring that up and this up here. And set it back down on the ground, and okay, now we have my guard container, and bring that back into prefabs. Excellent. So now we have our scene. So far we got our escape room with the coins that we have to pick up in order to unlock the button to open the door, and our guard patrolling around between different paths, points on a patrol path. And let's actually take a look at where these are. Oh, wait, these are up in some really weird locations. Well, anyway, you can imagine just the process of moving these around. That's a good thing to experiment with. Create some of your own paths, and that will be all for today's lesson. Next time, we're going to have the guard look for the player and then chase the player if we're seen, and to switch back and forth between chasing and following around these targets based on whether it can see the player or not. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.